So we're going to get into setting up our motherboard before we're putting it into the case here. Take out everything from your motherboard box that you're going to need. In this case it's got your Wi-Fi antennas, usually come with some SATA cables, and some tiny little M.2 screws. Don't lose these, you'll need them. Okay. So for this board, obviously with the AM4 socket, I'm going to be using AMD Ryzen 7 2700X processor in it. Nice little processor, comes with a really nice CPU cooler as well. Got to be nice and gentle with these because the pins on the back of the processor are extremely fragile, and if you bend one of them, you're going to have a very bad time. So on the Ryzen chips, if you look at it, in one of the corners there's usually a little gold arrow, and that will link up to where it shows you on your motherboard. In this case, this top corner up here. Make sure you unlock and put it in very gently, making sure you don't bend any of the pins. Just in nice and firm. Lock it into place, and let's get our CPU cooler ready. So some CPU coolers come with thermal paste already on the bottom of it. I like to remove that personally, so just give it a wipe with a paper towel and give it a wee clean down with a bit of isopropanol, and that'll be good as new. So once you've got your CPU cooler all nice and shiny, you can set it to one side for a moment, and we're going to apply some thermal paste directly onto the CPU. Brand I'm using is the Arctic MX4 thermal compound. I think it's pretty good, to be honest. It's not failed me yet. You only want to put a small pea-sized amount. There's lots of different ways that people say you can do this, but I just go with a small pea-sized amount in the middle of the CPU, and I allow the pressure of the CPU cooler to spread it around. This cooler in specific has already got the clips attached, which is great. You put one on first, and then this one is the one you put on afterwards. Apologise if this video isn't very great. It's the first time recording myself doing this, so I hope most of it's in frame for you. So let's clip that one on. Once that's clipped in, you'll be as gentle as you can. And once it locks into place, there's a little lever here that you just spring back to lock it in. That's your CPU cooler attached. Now, you've got this fan here, and it's going to go onto your CPU fan, which is normally up the top part of your motherboard up here. So in this case, it's up here. You can only put it in one way around because it's got channels to show you where and how it can go in. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our M.2 NVMe storage SSD. So this one's already come with the standoff already pre-installed, which is great. This board has got only one available slot for it, so it's nice and simple. Put it in gently, but you'll feel it pop in, and it'll be nice and solid. Take out one of these little screws. Like I say, they're absolutely tiny, so try not to lose them or drop them. So you'll need quite a small tipped Phillips screwdriver or star-headed screwdriver. The magnetic one really helps. Just push it down gently and screw it until it's tight. Not too tight, you don't want to over tighten it, just tight enough to hold it in place. And it's as simple as that to put an M.2 SSD NVMe in. And then we're going to go ahead and install some RAM. In this case we're working with the Corsair Vengeance Pro RGB DDR4 32GB, 3200 MHz, 4 sticks of 8GB. So you want to push the little clips on your your DIMM slots. Make sure they're all pushed down. On some motherboards, the bottom clips will not push down. If you're running with only 2 sticks of RAM and you've got 4 slots, you want to put it in the second and the fourth. If you're running with all 4, well, I would say 1 into each of them. And the RAM will only go in one way round, slightly off center of this groove here, so you're not going to be able to put it in that way. In this case, it goes in this way around. You want to put 1 in at a time, nice and slowly line it up. Push down evenly from both sides at the same time, and you hear a little click to know it's in place. 1 on each side. So it's perfect, all the RAM's all plugged in. We've got our processor in, we've got our CPU cooler on, we've got our NVMe boot drive. Don't always need to put these on here, but obviously those are the fastest type of storage going at the moment, so that's why we're going with it in this case. Now I'm just going to get ready and show you guys how to install the motherboard into the case. So now we're going to put our motherboard into our case. We're running with the NZXT H510 here. It's quite a nice little case, I'm sure you've seen them, extremely popular. Wonderful thing about this motherboard is it comes pre-installed with its IO shield already, which is fantastic. It means you don't have to be popping it in already. But we've got all our standoffs all lined up for where they're going to go into the holes, and we're going to screw it in, keep it nice and secure. They're lined up already, and you want to be as gentle as you can here, because there's a lot of important things on the back of the motherboard that you don't want to scratch or scrape off. So let's try and put it in as neat as we can. Get it into place and line the screws up with the standoffs, which is good. So we've got our motherboard screws here. Usually they come, these ones are slightly different to usual ones. These ones are like flat-headed ones. Quite often they have a little dome on the top and they have like a built-in washer around them, so they look slightly different, but these are nice and flat, probably just purely for aesthetic reasons. So bear with me on this because it takes a little bit of time. It's quite small and quite tricky. But again, this is fantastic where a small headed Phillips screwdriver which is magnetic comes in, because it means you can hold your screws and you're not getting these big fat fingers into these weird awkward little places. So give me a moment, I'll get these screwed in and I'll come back to you. Okay, so now we've got our motherboard fully screwed in, nice and secure. We're gonna, in this case, add the fans to this one. It already comes with 2 exhaust fans. We're going to stick another 2 at the front up here. But I'm actually going to take these 2 and put them down here, and I'm going to replace these 2 ones with some nice RGB lights. Why? Because I can. Okay, so nice and simple. I'm going to take this fan off and replace it. Very easy, I'm sure you guys have seen how to change a fan before. It's usually just 4 screws. They look like this. Big, fat, gnarly looking things. You want to try and avoid changing the same fan again and again and again, because these screws literally chew into the plastic to hold them in place. So if you keep changing the same fan over and over and over, eventually you're going to end up basically damaging the holes where the screws goes in, and you're not going to get a good grip on it, and they're going to be loose. And when they're on and running, they're going to be rattling and making horrible noises, going off balance and just making your rig really horrible and noisy. Okay guys, that's the second exhaust fan taken out. I'm going to replace them with these nicer RGB ones. Now remember, in this case, this top one and the rear one, just like on most cases, you want to have them as an exhaust. 9 times out of 10, the rear side with the supports is the side where the air is going to be blowing through to. It comes from here, comes out here. So the one with the supports is where the air is going, and you want the air to exhaust in this case. So in this case, this is going to be the front, and it's going to blow the air out of the case. And it's going to be facing the bottom, and it's going to be blowing the air out of the case. And the same as if it was the front fan, and it was going to be an intake. This side is going to be the front, blowing the cold air in, rear, blowing the hot air out. Okay, so now we've added our additional fans, changed them for nice RGB ones, and we've added two at the front for some extra airflow. We're going to start connecting the cables that come with the case to the motherboard. These cables are for your on-off switch, your USBs, headphones, all sorts of stuff like that usually come where you connect things into the case directly. They need to be attached to the motherboard somehow, and these are all the nice little pretty ones that you get attached and coming from the back. All these lovely messy rat nasty cables. So we'll start with this one here. It's pretty simple. There's only one part of your motherboard that this can plug into, only one way around you can plug it into. Nice and simple. Let's flip it around and have a little look. So on every motherboard, everything's going to be slightly different in slightly different places or very similar. So by the looks of it, on this B550 motherboard, she's hiding down here. You can see that. So the nearest place for us to feed through from there is going to be in the little holes in the back of the case down here. So again, just coming through the back with it. Yes, so camera, like I said, it can only go on one way around. You can see the notch that it's going to go into here. And make sure it's in nice and tight. But again, not too tight, you don't want to force it or break anything in your motherboard. Nice and simple. Get her in. Let's go on to the next one. Next cable we're going to go with is our Focus HD audio. Now again, usually they're down the left hand side of your motherboard. Let's see if we can find it down here. And as usual it is. So on your HD audio you'll see that there's always one socket missing. If you look at the pins on your motherboard, there's going to be one pin that's not missing. You want to line them up, stop you plugging it in wrong. So we're going to feed this one down around the back, get her up and get her plugged in. Nice and simple. Put the cable down and out of the way. Then we've got our, I'm going to go with our front panel connector. This is a more premium case, so the more premium cases usually come with your front panels in an all-in-one socket style. Quite often, if you can find that. In some cases, when you get them, they may come in individual little bits looking like this. These will all go into your front panel header down the bottom, usually down the bottom, sometimes up the side, but 90% round about here. And they all go in individually. Like I say, in this case, it came with a single panel header. You can plug this in if you want directly into here, and it means you can only put a certain amount in, you can put all of them in, or only the ones you want to. Some people use the reset button on your computer to control fan speed, LED colors, etc. But for the sake of simplicity for this build, I'm just going to plug this one straight in. So for this one, it's down here. It's got 9 pins. Again, there's usually always one that won't be getting used. And nice and simple. Let's get it pushed in. Brilliant. Another cable, only one place on the board to put this one. And nice and simple. And what have we got left? So at the back of this build, that's pretty much all that connected. We've only got these fans to do. So I'll jump on to the next section, just where I'm going to hook up these RGB fans, the little header that they came with. So at the back of the case here, we fed the 2 cables for these fans. With this pack that we bought, it comes with a controller, which is powered just by a SATA cable, which you get from your PSU, which we'll get onto shortly. Comes with a nice sticky back bit of plastic. Take it off, stick her somewhere on the back of your board, somewhere that's not going to get in the way, like there. Now 9 times out of 10 when you buy different fans, they're either going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 different cables. Most of them are all independent from each other, so they're not really going to work if you try and join more than 2 together, or from 2 different brands, sorry. And we're just going to simply pop them in. And in the case of this brand, by using this, we'll be able to control the colours of them with this little remote control once it's all set up. And just while we're here, this case is really amazing for cable management. So we're just going to start feeding some cables in, just get them out of the way before we start putting our PSU in, because that is a whole lot of cables. Cable ties. You're going to want to have lots and lots of cable ties. Okay, so I just routed these cables nice and quick. The only other cables we've got currently coming out the PC that are not plugged in are these 2 fans at the front here. If your fans, like I say, these ones came with the case, they're only 3-pin fans, system fans, not going to fit this, so we need to power them another way. Usually on all your motherboards, you'll have several different fan headers. You're going to have your CPU fan, you're going to have your AAO pump header, and what we are looking for is, so we're looking for something that says system fan 1, 2, 3, 4. Depending on what board you got will depend how many you've got. And it's nice and simple. They just come through and plug straight into them. Okie doke. So that's all the fans connected, all good to go. There's this big fan here, your CPU cooler. Because this is the Wraith Prism version, there's 2 ways to power this and get your RGB working. You can either sync it to your motherboard, or you can just plug it directly into a USB header and run it with the software, which I recommend. If you're going to plug it into your motherboard, don't. Plug it into your USB, get the CoolerMaster software. It's 1,000 times better, and we'll show you that later on. So, like I say guys, in this particular build that we're doing, we're running with the Wraith Prism CPU cooler. At the bottom of it, there's 2 little rubber connector covers. Covers little holes with where you can plug cables into. Undo the one on the right hand side. This is going to be your USB connection, the one that you want to use so you can use the CoolerMaster software. Do this before you start putting your graphics card in, because you're only going to end up having to take your graphics card out to be able to put it in unless you've got tiny little lady hands, which unfortunately for me, I do not. And that will connect to anywhere on the bottom board that says USB, so any of these USB headers. Again, you're going to have 1 port missing, 1 port blocked out. It'll match to where the pins are. Okay, so just before we put the power supply in, we're going to go ahead and get our hard drive or SSD, depending on what you're using, attached to the motherboard using the SATA cables that, like I say, 9 times out of 10 will come with your motherboard in the packaging. Most motherboards these days come with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or even more sometimes, connections to put your SATA cables in to power your storage drives. And we're going to put it in this bottom first one that is closest to the motherboard. Again, there's only one way around you can put these in, so you can't mess it up, don't worry. And push it until it clicks, and it's nice and secure. Some cases will come with hard drive chassis, some will come out with little drawers you can pull out and just pop them in. Some of them you'll just screw directly to the top or the bottom, In this case, it's going to slide in, and we're going to fire some screws on the side here. I'm not going to show you that, I'm sure you know how to put a screw in. Okay, so that's our hard drive put in. We're just going to connect the SATA cable from the motherboard into the hard drive. Again, there's only one way around you can put these. They've got a little L shape in them. Same as the SATA power cables, just slightly smaller. Again, it'll just pop in, and then we're good. Now, onto the power supply. Okay, so power supply, I'm sure you've seen one, you know what they look like. Come with lots of cables, unless you've got a modular version. Lots of cables. You won't have the fan face in the bottom to provide cooling. Main one, biggest one, most awkward one. Up here, up the top. So, and nice and tight so it clips. It's not moving nowhere. That's wonderful. We've got our CPU cable up here. Some of them come labelled with CPU PCIe, some don't, but you'll be able to tell the difference between the two. They shouldn't be able to fit anyway. And your motherboard, or your CPU power, is usually up on the top left hand side. It's usually hidden right up in this top corner up here. So, come on, can we get you in there? Right in this top corner. Can be a bit tricky to get into. Again, they can only fit in one way. They'll either come with a 4-pin or an 8-pin connection, and most power supplies will come with a 4 or 8-pin. My camera won't bend around this angle to get you, but just let me plug it in, and you're going to have to trust what I'm saying here. Okay, so now the CPU power is in. Let's flip it around and get our hard drive connected using our SATA cables. So again, like I said, the SATA cables can only go one way. They've got an L shape on them. That will fit directly down here onto your hard drive. This is what's going to power this fan unit as well. Obviously, power supplies come with lots of cables. You sometimes get some of the older power connections called Molex cables, and you usually get several SATA cables to power several peripherals. So that's everything connected cable-wise, with the exception of the GPU, your graphics card. That's going to be powered off one of your PCIe cables. So in anticipation for that, I'm just going to feed this through here and get it ready on the other side, and then we're going to do a little bit of cable management. Now, the only cable we should have loose, like I said, is your PCIe, which we're going to use to connect our graphics card. Okay guys, so we've done our cable management, pulled the PCIe cable through the bottom here. Now it's time to go in with our graphics card. So for this one, we're rocking the Gainward Phoenix 1080. Very, very, very nice card. Very nice card. So on your case, you're going to have all these slots here. You want to just double check where it's going to plug in and what slots you're going to have to knock out. So try and keep your little cable from your CPU cooler in. This is going to plug directly here. It's going to have a little clip again. When you push it down, you hear it go pop, and you know it's in correctly. Just pull all these cables out of the way. Put this one up here. I think it's a bit tight. This is a big card. And listen for the pop. There we go. And there we go, she's in. Nice and beautiful. Most graphics cards will either have a 6 pin, an 8 pin, a 6 and an 8 pin, or 2 8s, or with these new cards, more. Most of them will come with little adapters to turn your 6 into 8s. So a 6 plus 2, put them together, and we'll pop it in. I'm just going to drop a couple of screws in here to hold this together because this is a big boy card. No, we're moving it. How are we looking then? Looking all good so far. I think that's everything all plugged in as far as I'm aware. Now all we need to do is boot her up and see if she'll post. Let's do it.